Hey guys, how are we today? So Bitcoin looks like it is on track for a green month for the first time since September. Now the monthly BX trender is still red, and I do believe we probably will have to squeeze up through 95k and potentially 96, 97k for that to turn light red. And one quick note is a light red close on the monthly typically holds a much stronger, is a more reliable signal than a light red close on the weekly, because on the weekly chart, we can get lots and lots of fake signals. Now, obviously, a bunch of, single digit losses when you're racking in double and triple digit wins is probably not a big deal, but it can be frustrating to get chopped out of your trade many, many times in a row. But on the monthly time frame, if you have a look, once you start getting that light red close, with the exception of this time here, which was obviously COVID happened, so Black Swan event, and a little bit here through 2015, but pretty much every other instance when you get a light red close on the monthly time frame on the BX trender, you will see at least a multi-month bull run, should I say. So that is one thing to take note. On the weekly time frame, you can see we were on track to close light green for the first time since August. However, we have been slapped back down in the last day. So again, if we can close this week above 94, 95k, that would be an awesome signal on the weekly time frame, because once you start getting those light green closes, you almost always see at least a couple more weeks of upside action, because that light green is so much more reliable of a signal than the light red. Again, as Jason always says, you're paying a premium for more confirmation. But in my case, I have been in this trade since around 87, 88k. So was it like 88.6 was I talking about as an entry? But anyways, heading over to the daily time frame, you can see we've had this fourth time breakout at 90,500 roughly, and it looks like we have attempted this fourth time breakout at $93,000. However, as Michael always says, when you start getting these huge bars at the end of a move, I can't remember if it's Michael or Jason, but when you're already many days, many weeks, or many months into a swing, like the swing is quite mature, then you get these big bars. It's often a sign of exhaustion, which marks a significant bottom in this case. Price really didn't go much lower than 88.5. Unless you used more than 10x leverage, you would have been fine. And same here, price really didn't go much higher than the top of the sixth bar, 91.5 up to 94.8, and it came right back down to fill, I guess, the abnormal bar the next day. So one thing I do like is we have managed to close yesterday above this breakout zone of 93.1. I'm going to be happy as long as we're holding above the 50-day TMA at 89.2, and Michael has been tracking this breakout zone of 90,600 in his videos, which you can go check out in his recent videos. So I'm not exactly sure if I count yesterday's bar as a proper retest, just because it hasn't quite come down to test the old tops. It looks like it's been bought up too quickly. And being a swing reset bar, typically I like to see a lower high close on the BX trender, but we have closed a higher high, which in my opinion shows a lot of buying pressure, which isn't exactly a good thing when you're 7 bars up into the swing already. So I do think there is a possibility that we take out this low of 91.1 and come back to around 90,600, potentially, getting a flash crash down to 89.2 to retest the 50-day TMA from the overside. Now that obviously does not have to happen. It happens sometimes where you get a breakout, you get a perfect retest from the overside, Like here, you get this bounce, retest, and then another move. And same here, you get a break above, you get a failed move down, followed by a fast move up. So pretty much, as long as price action stays above $89,000 on a wick basis, and around 90,600 to 91,000 on a closing basis on the daily, I'm going to be pretty happy. Now, coming down to the 4-hour time frame, there really isn't much to talk about other than the fact that we've still got this resistance cluster up at around $98,000 that we haven't quite reached yet. I may have to draw some more trend lines, but I haven't really been paying attention to the short-term price action. Just because you can see we get these 7-8 bars moves on the 4-hour time frame, and it doesn't really affect price action much. 1-hour time frame, again, not much to talk about. We've seen a bit of volatility. Obviously, 15-minute time frame shows that volatility a bit better. And coming over to the market data, you can see we're picking up on the liquidations a little bit for the first time since the pre-Christmas period of 17-18 December. So if we jump back to our chart, you can see that was around here. So typically when you start getting, volume and liquidations picking up, it can be a sign of a significant top or bottom. So whether this ends up being a lower high off of this lower high here, or it ends up being a significant higher low on the daily time frame, which Michael covers a lot in his video, the signals to watch out for, so please go have a look at that, I think is definitely still up for debate. Now you can see the long-short ratio is pretty balanced. 24-hour volume is coming back up. That thing went down to like $60 million over the Christmas New Year's period, so it's really nice to see volume coming back to the market. If we have a quick look at liquidation max pain, you can see we're also pretty balanced. We're 1.35, 1.65%. So again, a wick down to 91.1, which would just take out this previous daily bar, is definitely possible to liquidate some longs. And then if we can potentially have a nice reversal to liquidate some shorts. Now on the 1 month time frame, you can see our long max pain is down at $86,000. Now ideally, I don't want to see that get hit, as that would be a 4th time breakdown of this here, of this triple bottom here, which you can have a look at Michael's video. So that would be a very bearish signal. So I would like to see this 94.8 get taken out, and we are closer to it than we are to 86.2, which is really nice. So I think 94.8 would be pretty much on par with this. And using monthly liquidation max pain signals, typically if you take out if you take out a monthly max pain and keep going to take out the next level, it shows a lot of strength in the market. So that would obviously bring the long max pain up as more people pile into longs, and maybe this comes up to 90k, 91k, and we push to 97, 98k before we see that correction. And that correction could potentially end up being our weekly higher low, which if you can see here, we got 3 weekly higher lows before we got this big push up into the final lower high of the cycle. And yeah, I think, if we push up to 98k, come back to, 91, 92k to form a weekly third higher low, and then we make a final push to, 103k, 108k, 113k, whatever it ends up being, and rolling over from there, that would be an ideal scenario. Now, a quick look at ETH. You can obviously have a read here, pause the video. I'm not going to read all of that out, but I shared this with the TIA Premium community. Now, the ETH chart has not actually changed much on the weekly time frame. We are attempting to close above the 50% level, but this hidden bullish divergence typically means that the trend is going to continue to the upside and form a higher high rather than a lower high. Now, if you go and backtest this signal, you can see here we had a hidden bullish divergence, and ETH managed to make a higher high. So one thing to note is that in the last cycle, when Bitcoin made that 48K lower high, here, a lot of altcoins, or not a lot of altcoins, a handful of altcoins actually managed to make a higher high, just because they were in a fundamentally better position than Bitcoin. Not fundamentally, structurally, sorry. And ETH, if we manage to get above this 50% level, could end up being one of those outperformers. So ETH could, based off of this analysis right here, potentially come in and make, a $5,200, $5,500 high before rolling over. Or, of course, we could fall just short, come into 4K, 4.2K, 4.7K. But either way, I think ETH has a really nice tradable range potential. And it is a market I will be watching and keeping up to date on this channel. But that's all for today. USDT dominance is on track to close dark red on the weekly BX trender. Stochastic RSI, bearish cross. And if we can break this double bottom here at around 5.76%, it would be really nice for the Bitcoin rally. And for other cryptos, of course. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and please like, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye.